Today's episode has been brought to you by
Schedulicity.
Welcome to episode 43 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast with today's guest, Steph Crowder, who is a podcaster, an entrepreneur coach, and a mother. One of the most common struggles I hear from yoga teachers is that they want to be teaching yoga full-time or increasing their yoga teaching time. Steph Crowder works with many entrepreneurs one-on-one through podcasting and in an online forum for entrepreneurs. She gets this struggle and she has an amazing formula to really allow us to calculate how you, with your unique and totally individual situation as a yoga teacher, can calculate how and when you can reach that point where you can teach full-time, where you can decide to quit your day job or increase your yoga teaching income. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I'm a mother of 3, a yoga teacher, and a consultant for yoga teachers. I have a lot of questions as a yoga teacher, and I'm so grateful to be able to ask them here and to share the answers with you. I really appreciate you listening. Thanks also to those of you who have reached out in the Connected Yoga Teacher online group via email or voicemail or on social media. I love to hear your questions, the challenges that you're facing, and the wins that you are experiencing as a yoga teacher. The Connected Yoga Teacher podcast is a place where yoga teachers can feel supported every week between the classes, workshops, and trainings that they are teaching or attending. Every week we get to hear from yoga teachers, but also other professionals. And together we get to connect to knowledge, inspiration, stories, and actionable steps. Most of all, this is a place where you can connect to a supportive community. And if you want to join our community a little bit more, if you are already on Facebook, we have a group for yoga teachers on there. Go to theconnectedyogateacher.com and click on the Join the Community button. You'll see it on our homepage. Before we dive in and meet Steph Crowder, let's first hear from Chelsea with the hot tip of the week.
Connected Yoga Teachers, this is Chelsea from Schedulicity with a hot tip of the week. Schedulicity's package management add-on is a great option for yoga teachers. This allows you to create an incentive package with a discount that can add value to your students' visits and help ensure their return business. If each one of your classes costs $10, you could create a 5 for $40 package and offer it online. Then, when your clients are booking a class, they'll see this option. Payment is required upfront for packages, so you'll be paid and they'll have a great reason to come back. Maybe one 5-class package is all they need to turn their yoga practice into a habit.
Thank you for that, Chelsea. I know I'm really excited about how I'm going to use packages in my own yoga teaching in the spring. I've made some new plans already, and it was inspired by the fireside chat with Schedulicity, which actually happened today. And so I can share a link to that video. For those of you who missed that fireside chat, you can go back and watch the replay. I will share a link for that in our show notes. It was a lot of fun. It was just a great time to get to hear from different yoga teachers from all over. And it just gave us this time to really connect and also ask the Schedulicity rock stars a lot of questions. So there's an hour-long video if you want to dive in and watch us connecting, or if you want to connect with the Schedulicity team, they even say in the video that they're very happy when people call. You can also just sign into Schedulicity and start a little chat with them there. They're great to reach out very quickly and answer questions from yoga teachers. So funny little story about this interview with Steph Crowder. It was Bring Your Child to Work Day. You guys might have heard me talking about that in previous episodes when I recorded this episode. And for all the people that my son would be interested in hearing from, Steph Crowder was the one that he was the most excited about. And I was so excited that it just happened to land on that day. The reason why is because when I got to know the Fizzle Show, I would go into Colton's room to wake him up in the morning with the Fizzle Show opener, and it sounded like this.
Hello and welcome to the Fizzle Show! This is the Fizzle Show.
So you can imagine that my son Colton might have been slightly annoyed with me, but I think it was pretty infectious just with this full-on energy that Chase shares in the intro. And so Colton actually got to know the Fizzle Show pretty well. And so when I said I'm interviewing Steph of the Fizzle Show on Bring Your Child to Work Day, he was super excited. So he got to say a little hello to Steph and listen to the interview and see how that all came together. So it was a lot of fun. Thank you, Steph, for just really diving in and saying hi to Colton. Thank you also to Corbett and Chase and for the whole Fizzle Show. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes for sure. So to dive into just a little bit about Steph Crowder is the head of member success, also known as the Den Mama at Fizzle.co. And this is a place where there are courses and it's a real community for creatives, makers, and entrepreneurs. I am a member of the Fizzle Forum, and I really love and support the community there. Even though I'm not in there that much, I love the courses that they offer, and it's just a lot of fun on there. Steph also hosts the Courage and Clarity podcast, and she co-hosts the Fizzle Show. When she's not helping people to build their thing, she's hanging out with her husband and her 1-year-old daughter, sipping wine or decorating her new home, which is in Louisville, Kentucky. So Steph just moved there. And I really wanted to reach out to Steph because a lot of yoga teachers are asking me, when can I become a full-time yoga teacher? I want to teach more yoga, but I feel like I'm not really getting there or it's not really working. And so this is a great episode if you're wanting to increase that yoga teaching time, whether it's just a little bit or all the way to full on. Steph has a lot of information to share with us on this topic. It's a packed episode for sure. She's going to talk with us today about minimum viable income. And don't worry if you're not sure what that is, she's going to explain it all. And then if you're curious a little bit further, she has a PDF that everyone can have, a little gift from the Fizzle gang. And Steph also talks to us, and I will include a link in the show notes for this as well, about how we can sign up if we want to try out 5 weeks of the Fizzle Forum and the online courses. So let's dive in and hear from Steph Crowder. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Steph. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell our listeners how you got started on this entrepreneur journey. Where did that begin for you?
Absolutely. So I am a podcaster. I'm a blogger. I'm a business coach. I help run a business called Fizzle. It's over at fizzle.co. And we are a membership community, and we're course creators as well as a kind of community cheerleaders. We're sort of one part teaching and one part community for creatives, freelancers, and entrepreneurs. So I am in that business with 2 other fabulous gentlemen, Corbett Barr and Chase Reeves. And it's really funny. My career starts back in about 2010. I graduated from college and I moved to Chicago, and I had the amazing opportunity to grab my seat on what I didn't know at the time was going to become a total rocket ship, which is the little company you may have heard of called Groupon.com. And when I moved to Chicago, this company Groupon was a brand new fledgling company, and it was just getting started there in Chicago. And I had an internship at the time, and I didn't really know what I was going to be doing. And I decided to go join Groupon. And I think I was employee like 400 something. I started as a salesperson. And by the time I left 5 years later, that company had grown to over 10,000 employees. So suffice to say, it was a crazy bananas experience. I went from being a salesperson to actually being the person that trains new employees. And the company was growing so quickly that I was literally training 30 to 50 new people every single week. So that's what I did for a long time. And then I was really lucky, loved my time at that company. I believe that because it was such a fast growing company, I had opportunities quicker and at a younger age than maybe if I were at a more traditional kind of slower paced company. And I grew really, really quickly to the point where I was running my own department for all of North America by the time I was in my mid-20s. So this prompted me to open my own career coaching business for young women, just because I had a lot of people reaching out out to me, whether it was LinkedIn or within the company, who were saying, how have you done what you've done at your age? I would love if you could mentor me. And I said, okay, well, this is fun. I like talking about this stuff. So I decided to start my own business, my own blog, and I joined Fizzle as a member, actually. I started as a member, a paying customer, trying to grow my own thing. And I fell so head over heels in love with the mission of Fizzle. And I found that what those guys were trying to create or had created with their business was basically the same thing I was trying to pursue on my own. And I'm very much a team person. I thrive on collaboration and teamwork. So I threw my name in the hat for a very part-time customer service role, kind of taking a leap of faith that if I could just get my foot in the door, I just had this very strong gut feeling, loved the culture and the message so much that I thought if I could just get my foot in the door, I could contribute to the company to the point where I could grow, and become a permanent fixture. And that's exactly what's happened. So I've been with Fizzle for about 2.5 years now. I run all things membership. So really anything that has to do with our customers and our members is kind of my wheelhouse. We have a podcast, the three of us, called The Fizzle Show. And for the past year, I've been hosting my own podcast called Courage and Clarity. So that in a nutshell is what I do and my path to how I've gotten here.
Well, you're so appreciated. I remember listening to The Fizzle Show, and at one point I thought, this is fun. Like, I like it and I like the content. I just kind of wish there was a woman on here who got what it was like to be a mom, and bang, there you were one day.
I'm so glad you appreciate that. I've heard that a number of times, and I'm very honored to represent, do my best to represent all the hardworking women and especially the mamas out there. It's really a fun thing that I get to do, and I love it.
Yeah. And so then also your own podcast. I love that you bring an inspiring story and then actionable steps. I feel like that's really the way you interview and then summarize is very inspiring to me. So I was excited to reach out to you, even more excited when you said that, yes, you would come and chat with us about minimal viable income and give us some actionable steps. So can you just let us know, first of all, what is minimal viable income?
Absolutely. So there's this concept that we teach at Fizzle that I think is incredibly powerful. And like you said, it's called minimum viable income. And for just because that's a bit of a tongue twister, from here on out, I'll probably refer to it as MVI. People listening, if you've listened to other business podcasts or read business books, you may have heard of the concept MVP, minimum viable product. And this is kind of a similar, like a spin-off of that concept. A minimum viable product is the idea, it comes from like business wisdom, like business school type wisdom, Shark Tank, think about that type of stuff, where the idea is to build the minimum feature set that your product needs in order to be out there in the world. So the idea here is, if let's say that you have an idea for an invention, like a pooper scooper or something. I don't know why that's the first thing that comes to mind, but that just seems like something it would be on Shark Tank. And you see that these people have a prototype, right? There's a reason the prototype exists. They don't go building the biggest, baddest, most bells and whistles version of that product because nobody's bought it yet. And that would be kind of a waste of time and resources. You're not going to go, hopefully, and manufacture 10,000 pooper scoopers for market when you don't even know if there are people who are interested in buying that. You don't even know if you have 10,000 people who would buy your product. You don't even know if one person's going to buy it. So the idea behind MVP is developing that minimum set of features to just see and test whether or not the market has a demand for the thing you're creating. Okay, so that's MVP. MVI is this, we created this as a kind of spin-off of the same line of thinking, but it has to do with your income as an entrepreneur. So what minimum viable income means is, the question that we're asking here is, how do we determine what the minimum amount of income that you individually need to make? I like to look at it as on a month-to-month basis, so that you are kind of in this place where your bills are paid, okay? You're keeping the lights on. You're not living under a bridge with your family, but are you like going to Hawaii and flying on private jets? No. So sometimes we refer to this as ramen profitability, or your spaghetti number, which basically means what would you need to make each month to survive on spaghetti or ramen? And that's a little bit exaggerated, but hopefully our listeners get the point, which is like, what would you need to bring in to feel a little bit tight, but your needs are taken care of, your family is fed. It's not the number that you want to stay at that forever. It's not your forever income. It's just the number that you need to not have to have another job. That's kind of the concept of minimum viable income. And the reason this is so crucially important, it's one of the first things that we have our new entrepreneurs do when they join us over at Fizzle. We have people work out this number for a number of reasons. The first one being it's very, very individual. You know, depending on where you live geographically, it is going to range so wildly if you live in San Francisco versus Jackson, Mississippi. You know, there's just different costs of living. So we can't tell you how much money you need to bring in on a month-to-month basis based on like some blanket number. There's just too many variables. Cost of living is only one of them. There's also family. You know, are you single? Do you have a family of 6 to feed? All kinds of different variables. You know, maybe you rent, maybe you own a home. So everyone, this is going to be kind of like this unique thing that we need to have a formula for in order to uncover what that number is. That's the first reason. The second reason this is so important is because the fear of not making enough money, the fear of your family living under a bridge is probably the number one thing that keeps people from pursuing their business dreams. And it makes sense because we have responsibilities. We're taught from a very young age that it's your job in this world to probably graduate from college, get some kind of education, land a job that has benefits and a salary, and you live happily ever after until you cash in your retirement. So it's very difficult to unwind and unravel this very traditional line of thinking. So there's a lot of resistance that people feel when they start to think about the murky, uncertain, no guarantee waters of entrepreneurship. So what I have found time and time again is when people actually do the math on this MVI, it is 9 times out of 10 a lower number than you believe it to be right now. So there's kind of similar to like, you know, like if you think about fear, you've probably heard it said before that naming your fear, identifying your fear makes it less scary. It's the same thing with this number. So when you're thinking about pursuing entrepreneurship, but you're sitting in your day job going, I can't possibly do that. I can't make enough money. That's like the thought that most people have. I have found many times over that putting an actual number on that. So instead of sitting there and being afraid and saying, I can't ever make enough money. My mortgage is too much. I can't possibly bring that in. Well, if you were to actually do the math on what you would need in order to have that ramen profitability, most people are pleasantly surprised when they do the math and they go, oh, $3,000 a month, $4,000 a month, $1,000 a month. Well, maybe there's a way for me to do that. So naming that fear and understanding what the goal is incredibly important to, it's one of the, I think the most crucial steps to working up the courage to pursue what is definitely an alternative way of having a career.
That is so important. And with many of the yoga teachers that I work with, they're either saying, you know, I want to be able to quit my full-time job or go down to part-time, or I want to fill up my schedule with yoga classes or say Thai yoga massage. And that's the first step, is to finding out, okay, well, how much would it take then to keep you afloat? Because they'll say to me, you know, when can I do that? How can I do that? And I feel like this MVI is the thing that's probably the first step.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you're just sitting there thinking, there's no way I can ever make quote unquote enough. Well, what is enough? You know, so it's going through some steps, and I do have some steps that we could talk through if it's helpful to actually uncovering that number. Because like I said, it's extremely unique. And there's, like you said, when you've had people approach you, people are like, well, when can I do it? It's a very tailor-made experience. So it's really important to take a hard look at your own situation and find the number that works best for you. So then you can tackle that and say, I got this. I can do this. I can figure out. Then it kind of just becomes like a math problem. It just becomes a matter of how do I make ends meet? And again, I want to emphasize, this is not the number that you're going to stay at forever. It's just enough to get you get to a certain point in entrepreneurship where you've got, you know, 1 foot on the boat, 1 foot on the dock, and you're wiggling back and forth, and you've got to eventually get in that boat and leave the shore. And I always tell people that when you reach that MVI, that's when it's time. That's when it's time to really get in the boat and trust that you've learned enough to make your way across the sea, if you will.
Okay, so when people reach that MVI in their business, like say if they're doing it part-time, is that what you mean? Just to clarify.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that is, okay. Over at Fizzle, we have what we call our small business roadmap. And there's a few crucial steps along the way that delineate sort of what phase you are in. And that is one of the crucial moments in business building. When you've reached that minimum viable income, a lot of people ask us, when can I quit my job? Like you were just saying, how do I, when can I fill my schedule with nothing but yoga classes? The answer to that question is when you're reaching your minimum viable income. That is kind of the moment when you can really consider going full time. time. And of course, that's not, a hard and fast rule. People have different circumstances, and maybe you can do it sooner, or maybe you're not comfortable with the MVI. But as a rule of thumb, this is a really great way to prepare for full-time entrepreneurship and make sure that you are in a good place to actually leave the nest, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And so it makes sense that we address the fear and look at it. I feel like a lot of the time, myself included, sometimes I'll just be head down in the work that I'm doing and not necessarily looking at the numbers as much as I could be.
Absolutely. And I think it brings it to real life. It's motivating to say, wow, I actually only need to bring in $2,000 a month in order for this dream to become a reality. So to your point, when you're up at the crack of dawn before your day job, before your kids are awake to work on your business or your projects, it's discouraging to feel like that's never going to end. And having that number as a goal is a way to kind of feel like you're not going to stay in this space forever. You have something concrete that you're working towards when you know that you hit that level, that you're actually going to be able to make this dream come true.
Oh, that is so good. So
it works.
All right. So if you can share as many actionable steps as possible, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. So there are 4 steps to this process. And by the way, if it's helpful, we do have a free guide over at Fizzle that people can download. So I can make sure you have this link, Shannon, maybe for your show notes. But it's a really helpful guide to help you really uncover your own number. So you can check that out over on our blog at Fizzle. But so there's four main steps here. And the first one is determining the difference between what we call your fixed expenses and your variable expenses. So let's dig into this a little bit. Fixed expenses and variable expenses, if we were to sit down and each of us look at what we spend every month on a recurring basis. So that means, things that are coming up over and over again every month, some of those costs are fixed and some of them are variable. So a fixed cost, this is your Econ 101 class for people who've taken an economics class in college. This might be familiar to you, but a fixed expense it does not change over time. So think about your mortgage, your rent, things like that. Typically, maybe like a utility bill, there's sometimes more flexibility with that, I suppose, depending on, that's like a semi-fixed, but think about the things that don't change, your cable bill, maybe your cell phone plan, those bills that are like same number that you can expect month over month. It doesn't change depending on your habits. Okay. That's a fixed expense. Then we have variable expenses. Variable expenses are the opposite of this. They are directly influenced by your behavior. So examples of variable expenses would be groceries. It would be shopping, maybe your fun money, going out to eat, anything that kind of changes based on your habits. So that's the first thing to do, is to sit down and assess what are my fixed costs, what are my variable costs, and write down every single one of those. That's really step one, is getting everything out on the table. Like, what am I spending my money on? I find it's really helpful to literally go through a bank statement and start to make some categories of your fixed and variable expenses. So every expense that you incur should fit into one of these 2 categories. And if you have any trouble figuring out, well, is it fixed or is it variable? Just ask yourself the question, am I able to influence this expense each month? Or is this a standard cost that I'm incurring month over month? So that's the first step, is figuring out the difference between fixed and variable in your own life and capturing those numbers.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. So that's the first step. And then, so the second step follows pretty naturally from the first one. So the second step is called trimming the fat. So now that you've got your fixed costs and your variable costs, you can sit down and look at things and say, and really kind of take a hard look at this and see what comes up for you, right? So, ask yourself some questions. Are you surprised to see like how much money you're spending on dining out at restaurants? I can tell you, for my husband and I, when I did this experience, when I was leaving my corporate job, we were really shocked to see how much money we were spending on going out to eat. We didn't realize, because when you're swiping your debit card, sometimes it's $40 here, $80 here, $20 there. You don't realize that over a month, maybe you're spending upwards of $500 on going out to eat, just as an example. So looking at those numbers and seeing what comes up for you is a really useful exercise. Are you throwing out a lot of groceries at the end of the week? Maybe there's some things you could take a look at in terms of, can I try to reduce that grocery bill? What about, are you getting your nails done every month? Maybe that's something that you don't have to give up forever, but while you're working towards, keep in mind, this is the MVI. This is your short-term financial goal. So taking a look mostly at the variable expenses and saying, what can I curb? Because remember, variable expenses are those that we can influence. We can't really influence our mortgage. I guess you could talk about refinancing, but it's going to take more work. And actually that's a step further down. But the low-hanging fruit here is the mindless debit card swiping, taking too many Ubers, going to Starbucks too often. I think I have found that most of us have something in our lives that falls into the frivolous spending category. And again, I want to stress, I'm not suggesting you give up these things that make you happy forever, but looking at the variable expenses, those that you can influence, and challenging yourself to make some changes in the short term can really be your first step towards getting that minimum viable income number as low as it can possibly be. Because then, of course, you get to have your dream sooner if you can get that number down lower.
Yeah, that's so true. Even I'm thinking about like my credit card and I have an Audible on there, or, I might have a yoga subscription to a yoga video and it just happens every month and I'm not really thinking about it. And those things can really add up.
Absolutely. Totally. So the third step from there, and I kind of hinted at this. So far we've talked about identifying the difference between writing out all your fixed expenses, writing out all your variable expenses. The second step was trimming the fat, getting rid of those audibles and, other things that you can push yourself to kind of get that living number down lower. Third step, which is maybe my favorite, is I call it getting creative. And this one might bring up some resistance for some people, but bear with me. The question, and I think you can kind of make a game out of it, but the question that we ask here with step 3 is how creative can you get? So at this point, you've trimmed the obvious Audible, Starbucks, I'm sitting here drinking my LaCroix bubbly water. Like these are the examples of variable expenses that are the fat that we can trim. But in getting creative, the question is how creative can you get? So for example, is your cable TV package, is that worth getting rid of for the next 6 months to a year if it saves you a grand or two? How about your living situation? I mean, I have known aspiring entrepreneurs who've chosen to downsize their home, to move to a cheaper area. I've even known people who've moved in with their parents because they were that determined to be successful. Now, I want to make no mistake. Don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying that you have to go turning your entire... No, absolutely not. But I do I only bring that up to encourage people to explore and push the outer limit of what you believe is possible. Maybe there is a creative solution. Like I've known people who are a 2-car family that took a hard look at it and said, do we really need 2 cars? One of them is sitting in the garage and I've got car payments on it and I could sell it for some cash. These are the questions I want you to ask yourself if you're really determined to get there faster. It's totally possible that you don't need to get this creative. It's not for everybody, but for people who are listening and are like, how do I need to get this number down lower? This is something that you can look at. And like I said, try to be playful with it, try to make a game out of it and ask yourself, how creative can I get? Knowing that this is the short term, it's not going to be this way forever. It's just that means to an end to get you to the point where you're working on your business full time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is great. I think of that get creative as every 6 months to a year, I call my telephone company and say, like, can you help me out with this bill? It seems like it's creeping up there. And usually they have some offering that they can come up with.
Absolutely. Another example of this, when I was working towards my minimum viable income, is I was living in Chicago, downtown Chicago at the time, and I was driving my car to work every day, which meant I was spending gas money. I was paying for parking, which is not very cheap. So this is an example of, I probably didn't really challenge that before. I was like, no, I have to drive to work. I have to be at work. But then I started asking myself, can I consider taking the train? It's not, it takes longer. It's cold. It's inconvenient to walk to the train. But how bad do I want my dream? I'm willing to take the train for 6 months if it means that I really cut down on this monthly expense. So yeah, that's a great example of how you can get creative with it.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's not forever, even though we live with 1 car here. And sometimes that's a bit of a challenge because we're both yoga teachers driving to different classes, but we make it work. So
Absolutely. Yep. You make it work. And again, that getting creative is something you can play around with and just allow yourself to ask the question, even if you reject it, even if you ask yourself, could I move to a different house? And maybe you end up saying, no, I love my house. I don't want to move. That's fine. But what I'm suggesting is at least ask the question and explore how important these things are. Because that's another thing I find is many of us keep status quo just because it's always been that way. So it's worth going through the exercise of challenging what you have in your life. Even if you decide to keep it in there, asking the question can really be important for this.
Okay, so we've got number 1 is determining what is fixed, what can we not change, what is variable, what can we change. Then we work at trimming the fat, then we get creative, and what's number 4?
Number 4 is when we finally do the math. Okay. So after evaluating your expenses, you've made adjustments where you can, you're left with your own personalized minimum viable income number. So at this point, you've cut out everything you possibly can. You've challenged yourself, and it's literally just a matter of totaling up those costs. But the question remains, how will I get there? So you've got your number, and now you're like, all right, well, I need $2,000 a month. Let's just say that for easy math. So I need $2,000 a month, and I have to figure out how am I going to get there? So there's a few things to do at this stage to make a game plan for how you're going to make this happen. The first one is if you have a runway, factor it in. So some entrepreneurs come to the table with what we call a runway or a cushion of savings that they can rely on to help them offset that minimum viable income for a few months. So if this is a possibility for you, I would say figure out how many months your runway will buy you, or if you can use a portion of the savings each month to fill any gap between what you're earning and what you need. So that's the first thing to consider here is, do you have any kind of financial runway? It's pretty common for entrepreneurs to come to the table at Fizzle and say, I've got enough in the bank to make this thing work for 3 months, 6 months, a year. This is not mandatory, but it definitely does help to have that financial runway. So again, for example, let's say that you do the math and you need that $2,000 a month. That's your minimum viable income. Let's say you've got 10 grand saved up. Well, then you've bought yourself 5 months of working on this thing full time. So factoring that runway in is a good first step. And like I said, not everyone's going to have that luxury. It's not required, but you can get there a little bit faster if you do have that runway to rely on. And I just find it's really important to know this minimum viable income number, because 10 grand, for example, is going to go really quickly. It's going to run out of your bank account before you know it. So having a sense of, really budgeting and managing yourself to that $2,000 that you uncovered will help stretch that runway that much further. So that's the first thing to consider in this whole, this is within step number 4, which was doing the math.
Okay, great.
Continuing from there, so this is where you start to kind of figure out, how am I going to do this? So this is where you're exploring different, what we call business archetypes, to figure out your revenue model. Now, since most people, I'm guessing most people who are listening are in the yoga realm, you probably, this part might be a little bit easier for you because you probably have a sense of the different things you can do to bring in revenue. So you have a good idea of what your business archetype is or your business model. So maybe it's teaching. That's probably a very common business archetype for this crowd, is I am going to be a teacher. So then you can kind of start running the numbers, like how many classes do I need to teach in a month to hit that $2,000? Is there another thing I can do? Can I do a retreat weekend? What would that bring me in? So that you can kind of start experimenting with mixing services and products. You can kind of just do some math. If I were to teach 10 classes, maybe that would bring me in $1,000. And then how do I get to my other 1,000? Can I take on some one-on-one clients? You get the idea, right? There's different ways to kind of to skin this cat a few different ways. So you can kind of look at services and products and start putting them together and just working backwards from that number you came up with to have a rough game plan of how you're going to get there. So I have found over time, it's really helpful and enlightening to look at this and say, think about what we've done so far with this exercise. We've gone from, gosh, I really want to be a yoga teacher full time. I wish I could do that, but I have no idea how to do it. It probably can't happen. All these negative thoughts, to at the end of this saying, okay, I need to teach 20 classes in a month and I need to host a retreat weekend. And then I've got my number. That's obviously just a totally hypothetical example, but you get the point, right? You suddenly have a sense of what you need to aim for in order to achieve this minimum viable income that we're talking about. So suddenly this dream goes from a fantasy to an actual possibility. And then of course the work of it is figuring out how to teach that many classes, how to get the one-on-one clients, etc. So that's kind of what happens in this last step, which was the doing the math and then making a game plan, working backwards to getting yourself to that number.
What I really like about this stuff is that I see that it can help with a yoga teacher's confidence. They would know, I need to charge this to survive. These are my needs and I need to do that. And it helps them to be creative, like you said. It keeps teachers, in my experience, I see that some teachers are like, oh, well, I'll plan this class and make it a drop-in and whoever shows up, they want to serve and they want to help people.
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, only 2 people, but it takes some time to build. Whereas if you know your MVI, you're going and saying, I need 12 people at this class every single night. So now I do a registered session.
Exactly. It just brings it to that real life and you have more skin in the game. It's exactly what you just described. So if it helps, I can also share. So those were our four steps to figuring out your MVI and making a game plan. I have 4 quick strategies if you need to hit your MVI ASAP. So if there's anybody out there listening who's like, listen, I don't have 6 months, like I got to make this work now. I have 4 things for you to consider. So I can just kind of run through these.
For sure.
The first one I always tell people is consider one-on-one work. This is regardless of your industry. And I know we're primarily talking to yoga teachers here, but really across all industries, we at Fizzle often encourage people to go one-on-one coaching for a whole number of reasons. But one of them is it's easiest to get paid more by going one-on-one with people. So that might look like a number of things in the yoga world. And I encourage you guys to get creative. If you have some like ancillary services, I know I have some friends in the yoga teacher world who are also health coaches, maybe taking on some one-on-one nutrition clients, or maybe you're able to kind of do more life coaching, or maybe you can mentor new yoga teachers. You can decide how you would work with people one-on-one, but it's easier to get to that MVI faster because think about it. If you're in a group class with, 20 people, that's not going to be as expensive as an intensive 3-month mentorship. You might be able to charge $1,500 or more for that package for someone. So that's one of the first things we tell people. If you want to get there faster, consider one-on-one work. That's the first one.
That's great.
The second strategy is hit your network hard. And this is one that I'm always fascinated that people skip. And it's because it can feel a little bit uncomfortable at first. But if you're working with a time crunch and you need to hit that MVI fast, it's time to cash in on your Rolodex. So that means reaching out to your network using platforms like LinkedIn, emailing people and saying, hey, do you know anybody who could benefit from my services? Can you connect me with anyone? I'm doing some coffee chats, just some casual, 15-minute free consultations to see how I can better support people in their wellness practice. Really like cashing in on your network. If you need to get to your MVI fast, it is not the time to be shy. So, in a non-sleazy way, in an authentic and connected, meaningful way, talking to your Facebook network, sending emails to people that you care about, and seeing if there are people that they can introduce you to expand that network and start to get some more clients. So that's the second one, is hitting your network hard. And like I said, this is something that a lot of people overlook when they're getting started.
Okay. So that means even just reaching out to your friends and saying, look, I really want to work with this certain population. I want to teach more. I want to be in teaching restorative yoga. And can you connect me with people who are either in the healthcare field or who are feeling extremely stressed out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you can make it really informal and just say, listen, I don't want to sell anybody. I just want to, I'm trying to learn as much as I can about my target audience. Here's a quick calendar, just like a Skype coffee. I like to call them coffee chats, like super casual. There's not really a hard pitch, but just jumping on Skype and being helpful is an awesome way to start fostering that goodwill. And before you know it, someone will respond back to you after you have a coffee chat and say, hey, I really liked our talk. Do you have a package I can look at? So doing as much of those informal chats as you can and using your network to make more of those happen is definitely a way to accelerate this. So that was the second one. Mm-hmm. The third one is another one that a lot of people skip, which is don't neglect referrals. So, once you do start working with clients or having conversations with potential clients, always asking for referrals. So, the difference between having a new project to work on or not could lie in simply asking for a new lead. So making this part of your standard practice, so for example, let's just say, this is kind of like building on itself now. So our first one was considering one-on-one work. Let's say that you're going to start doing some 3-month mentorships for your wellness practice, hitting your network hard, emailing people saying, I'm doing these 15-minute informal coffee chats. Do you know anyone who might want to have a conversation with me? Then when you're on that conversation at the end, just really casually saying, hey, by the way, I really enjoyed talking to you about this. This is definitely my passion. Do you happen to know anybody else who might like to have a quick chat with me that I could, maybe give them a quick tip or two about wellness? So just casually, like referrals don't have to be this big scary thing. You can do it in a casual and aligned way that's just saying, do you know anybody else who I could help with the knowledge that I have? So that's the third strategy, is referrals.
Well, that's so good. And those people usually in the yoga world anyway, they have great testimonials to share, and you can just reach out and say, hey, could you tell some friends about it? That would be the biggest gift, the biggest thank you.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And then the fourth strategy here is definitely one that people need to consider, considering a second source of income. There's no shame in this. If you're, oftentimes the stress, it depends on who you are. Everyone has different tolerances for stress. If you are someone who, like, the stress of getting your bills paid is so overwhelming that it's squashing your creativity, it's messing with your mindfulness, all of that stuff, there is no shame in considering what is known as a bridge job. So an example of this might be, I have a good friend of mine who opened a coaching and consulting practice, and her bridge job was working the front desk at her local gym. Just bringing in maybe, like, again, if your monthly minimum viable income is $1,000 or $2,000 a month, maybe you could work at the front desk of a yoga studio for $1,000 a month or something, just to kind of take the edge off. So if you're in this position where you're like, man, I just can't, like, I'm scraping by and I can't do it, consider a second source of income. Getting those bills paid does allow for more creativity in your dream business. So consider getting those bills taken care of elsewhere so that you don't have to feel so squeezed and you can maintain that creative energy in your dream practice.
These are so good, Steph. So the one-on-one, we're going to hit our network hard and have a nice offer, like where we might be helping people out. They get to know us in this 15-minute chat. We ask for referrals and we don't snub our nose at a second income.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
So one question I have here, if people are kind of in the middle, so there's probably two groups listening to this with total excitement. One is the group that they're saying, I'm working full time and I want to be a yoga teacher full time. And so they are ready to go and figure out what this MVI is. But the other group might be, I am teaching full time and it's not working. Will this still work for them? Or they're teaching part time?
Absolutely. So yes. So I think the first question I would have for anyone who's teaching full-time and feeling like it's not working is examining this MVI number for yourself. So let's say you're teaching full-time and you're like, this isn't working. Well, that might be a case of you're not hitting that MVI. So it feels kind of crappy right now. Or maybe you're barely hitting it and it's still valuable to know that, let's say you're bringing in $2,000 a month and it doesn't feel like it's working, but you do the math and you realize 2,000 is your MVI. So you're hitting it. It could be comforting to you to know that, hey, I am not going to live in this space forever. Remember, this is like the third time I think I've said this now because it's so important. Your MVI is not your forever income. This is not the space you want to stay in forever. So sometimes just knowing, okay, I'm at my MVI, that's super exciting, but it's not going to be this way forever. So even if you're already a full-time teacher or you're a part-time teacher and you just feel like it's not working, I would still use these strategies, particularly considering the second source of income. If you are a full-time teacher and it's just not bringing in the revenue that you need it to, I would start to look at diversifying my income potential. So again, that might mean, can you take on higher end one-on-one clients? Can you host a retreat weekend? Is there a product that you can sell? Maybe a course, like an online course or something. Getting creative with looking at the numbers and saying, I need that $2,000 a month. I'm only making $1,000. What else can I do to kind of close that gap?
Oh, this is so good. And I appreciate too, Steph, that you're really bringing some solid, actionable steps and at the same time talking to us about money, because that's not everywhere that we turn, especially as yoga teachers.
Yeah. And I think, to be honest, I think the reason that this doesn't get talked about very often is what I opened the episode with, which is it's hard for anybody out there to give money advice just because it is such a uniquely individual thing. So that's why I love this MVI practice, because it just coaches you through figuring out what you need. Your MVI is different than mine, is different than everybody listening to the show, because we all have different circumstances. So I think that's why money doesn't get talked about, because it's just so unique. And I really like walking people through this exercise because it allows you to pinpoint the number that you need and work in your own individual way towards making it happen.
This is exciting. I am looking forward to our listeners, sharing how they're feeling about it and reaching out to you. If they want to reach out, and do you still offer one-on-one work, or?
Yeah, people can absolutely reach out to me. I'll just give you my email at steph@fizzle.co. And my website, if you want to check out my podcast, is just courageandclarity.com, all spelled out. I'm also on Instagram at Steph Crowder with an _ at the end. And I would love to connect with anybody who's listening.
Some of your Instagram stories are some of my favorites.
Oh, thanks.
I'd love to see your little one in there.
I know she definitely sneaks in there sometimes.
And I just appreciate if listeners are taking this in, they're like, wow, that was just a breath of fresh air. Your podcast is definitely like this, where you're just really open in sharing with listeners. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. And it's been really fun to be on your show. So thank you for having me. You can actually, just because we're friends and you found out about me through your podcast, Shannon, people can go to fizzle.co/courage. And that's my personal link to get 5 weeks for free. If anybody wants to come check out our community, see our courses, we talk about MVI in our roadmap. So you can definitely come check that out. Cancel anytime if it's not your thing, but I'd love to have some people from your crew come check us out over at Fizzle.
Alrighty, Connected Yoga Teachers, I told you it was one packed episode. Thank you so much for this, Steph. It was a lot for us to take in, to absorb, and to think on. And I'm so excited that the yoga teachers out there can start to really look at and have a calculation for this, so that instead of having this blind leap of faith to a full-time yoga career, we can instead really look at our individual situation, the calculations for that. And then we can know if we're going to make that jump, we really start to know what the distance is. Is it a little hop, or is it a giant leap, or is it something that is so much of a ravine type of jump that we need to build a bridge to cross it? One of the key takeaways that I have from today's episode is where Steph really talked about that this is the one key piece that can be holding us back from putting something out there. So I talked to many people who are afraid to take the leap and to leave a job or to go back to part-time. And so this really gives us a calculation where we can know, okay, it's time, I'm ready, financially I'm set, and I've calculated my MVI, or that minimum viable income. And I also really appreciate how Steph said that this is usually a lower number than we imagined. So huge gratitude also to Steph for saying that just for listening and being a connected yoga teacher, we can try out the Fizzle forum and see all of their courses and the forum there, and we can try that out for 5 weeks. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, as well as Steph's Courage and Clarity podcast, which happens to be one of my favorite podcasts out there. You know what would be fun to do right now? What would be really fun? Okay, maybe it's not fun, but what would be really kind and what would really mean a lot is if you would go on over to iTunes and leave us a review. So tell us what you think of the Money Mini series, or tell us what you think of the podcast overall. Maybe there's something that you'd like to ask or have added, or maybe you have some great feedback. We'd love to hear from you. If you would like to work with me further one-on-one, I do consultation calls with yoga teachers only, and you can go to the Work With Me tab on theconnectedyogateacher.com. If you want to meet up in person, I'm co-leading the Mama Nurture Prenatal Yoga Teacher Training, where we go through fertility, prenatal, postnatal, baby and me, and birthing, and you learn how to teach classes and workshops on all of those. It's 3 weekends in the spring of 2018. It's in April, May, and June, and it's in Meaford, Ontario, thanks to Beth Ruddy and her beautiful yoga studio there. So we already have some registrants, but there are a few spots still open. Stay connected yoga teachers, to yourself, to your practice, and to your community, so that you can really share the yoga that lights you up. Have a fantastic week.